With Benjamin Sesko set to join Manchester United this summer and Alexander Isak still looking for a move away from Newcastle United, I'll be looking at the other striker options available to Eddie Howe and the recruitment team this summer in today's episode of NUFC TRANSFER DAILY. We've also got an update on Malik Thiaw in the defender chase and also a link with John McGinn as well to talk about. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Please do hit subscribe and the thumbs up like button on these videos if you haven't already. Join the community. Today we're going to be discussing the striker situation in more depth. I did say yesterday on what ended up being a Q&A video, which I didn't really expect at the time, that today I'd be looking at where Newcastle go in their striker chase, particularly looking at an Alexander Isak replacement, if there are any out there. I've said and written, there's a piece in the description for Forbes about my opinion on keeping Alexander Isak now that Benjamin Sesko is not around, because he is the last viable sort of future replacement for Isak in my mind. But we will be discussing 5 other options of players who've either been linked or maybe have the right sort of profile and may be available. It's not that I want Newcastle to sign these players. I'm going to have my opinion and break down whether I think they'll end up joining or should end up joining or what will happen. And there are obviously plenty of other names we've discussed who may not turn up on today's list. For example, Gonzalo Ramos is on Newcastle's radar because I spoke about him the other day. There's not really much fresh to say. He's not on the list today, but other players who we have spoken about are returning to the list today. So let me know in the comment section what you think about this list and who you think Newcastle should go for, what you think Newcastle should do. Should they keep Isak, as I said, and I wrote in the piece for Forbes yesterday, as I said, it's in the description. Do go and check that out if you haven't already. But without further ado, we'll be getting onto the list. And the first name on it is the man who's most heavily been linked since the Sesko news broke, and that's Niklas Jackson. I had a question from Alex on the Q&A video yesterday asking about Newcastle's interest in Jackson, and it is obviously well known, it's been well known for quite a while that he is of interest in Newcastle, but I'd sort of poured cold water on this, and I still stand by this. I don't think it'll happen because the price that Chelsea are after, £80 million, is a lot that Newcastle will not be willing to pay in my mind. But also the factor that as I've said, they're also looking for a Callum Wilson replacement. That's likely to be Johan Visser. They're looking at maybe making some progress on that later this week, and if they get Visser, who will go to the AFCON in the winter, then they can't really afford to go and get Jackson, who will also be going to the AFCON, leaving them with Will Asula as their main striker and Anthony Gordon down the middle for the entirety of January in that situation. So not ideal, and that's why I think this one is unlikely to happen, because that's the exact scenario they're trying to avoid right now by signing a striker. So yeah, Jackson is an interesting case. I don't understand why he gets so much hate, not just from Newcastle fans, and I know you guys in the comment section maybe split on Jackson or maybe don't like him. I personally think he's a really good striker. I'm not sure he's Isak's quality. I'm not sure he's the best option out there. I don't think he's a good fit for Newcastle in terms of ideal, but his credibility as a striker cannot be denied for me. I think he scored double figures in 2 seasons at Chelsea, has held his own in a really difficult situation with different managers and different ideas and lots of change and lots of uncertainty around his position. Chelsea have been trying to replace him. They've obviously brought in Liam Delap and João Pedro, ironically, 2 players Newcastle wanted. Now that he's available, I don't think this would be the worst idea in the world. I think, as I say, he's got 32 goals and assists in 65 Premier League games. He's powerful, he's tall, his underlying stats are quite balanced. They're probably the most balanced on the list of the players that we're going to discuss today. If you look at non-penalty goals, 81st percentile, 84th percentile for non-penalty expected assists as well, shot creating actions, 78th percentile, 82nd percentile for non-penalty goals and expected assists, 83rd percentile for progressive carries and pass completion as well. So he links really well with teammates. Touches, he's heavily involved, to 78th percentile, tackles 75th percentile as well. So He's a very hard-working attacker. He can link play really well. He's a decent finisher. He's still quite raw. I understand that. I don't think he's a terrible option, though. I don't think he's worth £80 million. I think that's the big reason why Newcastle will not end up signing him, as I've already said. But I don't see him as this terrible option. I think there was a conversation we had on the True Faith podcast, and I think I've said this on this channel before, and I agree with that. I think lots of people have created this sort of meme around him, and he's become a figure of comedy in a way that he doesn't really deserve, and people watch him and confirm almost what they're told. I think if you watch him, you can see that he's got the raw abilities, and I think Eddie Howe could do really good things with him. If you join Newcastle for the right deal, and then Newcastle went and got the centre-back and went and got midfielder or two as well, I think that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But the reasons why I don't think this one will happen is because of the price. I don't think Chelsea are going to settle for the money that Newcastle should be willing to pay for him, which for me would be around 50 or 60 million quid. And also the situation with, if they get Johan Visser, can they really afford to get another player who'll be leaving in January for the AFCON? He's shown himself to be a very good striker, and sort of I think he's done better than lots of people have compared him to Didier Drogba when he arrived at Chelsea. He's definitely doing better at Chelsea in his first 2 years than Drogba did, and he's much younger as well. He's 24. Eddie Howe could do really good things with him, but the price has to be right, and I don't think it will be. Next on the list, we have probably the best option in terms of what Newcastle are looking for, the closest thing to Sesko in terms of the potential being there, and that's Samu Agahawa from Porto, this 21-year-old Spanish international striker. Really, really talented, big, powerful lad. 28 goals and assists in 39 games in all competitions last season, including the Europa League. So I know it's in Portugal. He scored 19 goals, and that was really impressive, but we know the Portuguese league isn't the best league in the world. Gyökeres is going to have to deal with that pressure this season. Darwin Núñez obviously came a couple of years ago and struggled to adapt. So there's trepidation there. And again, Porto would want a huge amount of money. Aston Villa are interested as well. But the 6 goals in the Europa League is what really caught my eye. And his physicality, again, is powerful lad. We've spoken about him a couple of months ago on the channel as an option. In an ideal world, I think he would have fit the thing of coming in alongside Isak for a year, developing under and alongside Isak, and having that lack of pressure of being the main man and then taking the mantle on in next year. I think it probably is, in my opinion, a little bit of a high risk to bring him in as the main man now for this season in the Champions League. Obviously, he could well thrive, but I think that is a huge risk. I think he's got one season as well. The difference between him and Sesko, because I can already hear you all screaming it, is Sesko's done it for 2 years in the Bundesliga, and previously he impressed at Salzburg as well. This is the first season at a high-end club. He's been at Alaves as well. In the past, Samu done fairly well. This is it was his breakout season, and the money that Porto would want, around £60 million, probably 65 million pounds, which is not too dissimilar to what Newcastle were willing to pay for Sesko and what they offered for Ekitike and what their club record is for Isak as well. I'm not quite sure he's as surefire as that level of ready yet, in the way that Sesko is, in the way that Ekitike is, in the way that Isak was. I think he's just below that in my head. Let me know in the comments again what you think. I know lots of you do like him, and I do really rate him. I think he's going to be a fantastic player. But if he were to come into Newcastle this season, I would like to see him come in as the second striker in an ideal world alongside Isak, and that ship has definitely sailed by now, it looks like. Love his physicality. He's he's very powerful, and again, you look at non-penalty goals, 92nd percentile, 85th percentile for shots total. Shot creating actions though is really, really low at 24%. And his link-up play is poor as well. Progressive passes, 19%. Passes attempted, 11th percentile. The ones he does make, though, 96th percentile for pass completion. Touches, 86th percentile. Interceptions, 73rd percentile. And we went in the video we went in to show how well he presses, how well he harries and gets the team up the pitch in terms of, and closes down. I think that's a really good attribute. In terms of what he would bring in, attributes and raw ability, absolutely ideal for what Newcastle need and what Newcastle could work with under Eddie Howe. But for £65 million, probably a club record fee off the back of one season in Portugal, that's a high risk strategy in terms of if you're looking for someone like Sesko or where Isak was, but I don't quite think he's at that level yet. let me know in the comment section if you disagree with him. This is the wild card of the list, and somebody who hasn't been linked at all this summer in serious circles. He's very much not wanted at Juventus, but he's also previously had that sort of high level potential, and we talked about Gonzalo Ramos and going for players, maybe if you can't get the next best thing, going and reinvigorating a career, and that would be what you'd be doing with Dusan Vlahovic at Juventus. He has had a very, very difficult time there, but still scored plenty of goals, double figures last season, even though he had a really terrible campaign, really. 14 goals and assists, 10 goals, 4 assists in 29 Serie A games. Juve didn't have the best season. He's not been happy there for some time. Wages are the big issue with Vlahovic, and by all accounts his attitude isn't great as well. He's also not particularly good in terms of link up and pressing. Again, look, his tackles 5th percentile, 17th percentile for interceptions. He's not going to do the legwork for Eddie Howe. Touches 90th percentile, so he's very good when he gets the ball. He's very efficient, but again, passes attempted 32, 32nd percentile, 46th percentile for pass completion. Progressive passes 31st percentile, so he's not a rounded striker. He's a very good goal scorer, but he's not a rounded striker. He's not somebody Eddie Howe I think could really work with and get the best out of. Shots total 89th percentile, and that is really where you're looking. I think he's a physical specimen. He's a very good box striker, similar to Ramos and what we were saying in terms of he comes alive in the box. He's not the same type of player. He's much more of a physical specimen. He's very good in the sort of physique element of what Newcastle are looking for. They obviously do want somebody who can lead the line and get on the end of crosses and do what Isak's done this season, but also what they were hoping Sesko would do. I think Vlahovic can do that in that sense, but he's not the rounded player that Eddie Howe wants. He's not the energetic presser that Samu is or Jackson can be. There's definitely a real risk with Vlahovic, especially even though he has scored goals. There hasn't been a happiness in his game for a few years, really, since he was at Fiorentina, and I think this one is just too high risk. His wages are well over 100 grand as well. Juve would want a heavy package too. I put him in the list not because I think Newcastle should or will sign him, more because he's one of those strikers that's previously had this sort of potential around him. And in terms of what I was saying about reinvigorating careers, he does have that in his locker potentially, but a well-rounded skill set in terms of what Eddie Howe would want, I can't imagine that would be, and it's a reason why he's not really been mentioned. He's not really on the list for Newcastle, and I think what I'm trying to explain is why that is. Even though he is available, he wants out of Juve want him out. There is a deal to be done for somebody there, but his wages are too high and the risk is too high, and I think that's why he isn't one for Newcastle. Ollie Watkins is next, and he is definitely the biggest guarantee on this list. Double figures in the last 5 Premier League seasons at Aston Villa. 24 goals and assists in 38 games last season. Didn't miss a Premier League game, which is really impressive. 29 years old. He is the one that you would get for now. And if the price was right, I think this is absolutely something Newcastle should look at. I'm talking sort of below 50 million for what you're going to get out of him. But I've said for so long, I just don't see this one being a starter, because Villa don't want to do Newcastle any favours. They're a direct rival, and they have been for 2 years. They don't also have any other strikers really on his level, so they'd be in the same situation that Newcastle are with Isak. If they sell one, they need another one anyway, so if he were to leave, Villa would then still need 2 strikers. They already need one. They're going in for Samu too. They've held talks by the sounds of it. So yeah, Watkins, again, if you look at his stats though, a brilliant option. Lots of green lines here. 97th percentile for assists, but also double figures and goals. So he's really well rounded. Interceptions, 74th percentile, can play out wide, drift out wide positionally. Makes a lot of sense for Eddie Howe. I think Eddie Howe has previously liked him as well. Progressive passes received, 71st percentile. Touches, 76th percentile. Shot creating actions is a little bit low in my mind at the 52nd percentile. Non-penalty goals, 64th percentile. So he's rounded. He's well rounded, but he isn't necessarily elite at everything, and that is kind of what I think you would get out of Ollie Watkins. He's going to score goals. He's going to do his job for the next couple of years, and that's a great addition if you can get him for the right price. But the trouble is, Villa will want maybe just slightly under what Newcastle have been willing to pay Leipzig for Sesko, whose ceiling is so much higher, and you would get so much more. I mean, you get 10 years out of Sesko. You wouldn't get 10 years out of Ollie Watkins. Yeah, for me, he would be the most plug-in and play player on this list. but I just don't see how Villa let it happen. But I also don't see how Newcastle really benefit from this long term, because in a PSR world, that sort of big outlay for an older player can really come back to bite you, and it might impact their ability to have a long term replacement next year. So there are definitely pros and cons. I would put money on him scoring over 15 league goals, possibly even 20 in the team at Newcastle, and he would work really well under Eddie Howe as well. But I just don't see this happening from a Villa perspective, and also from a long-term Newcastle perspective. Is it really the right option for them? And finally, the player that lots of people in the comment section have been asking me to talk about, and I have resisted up until now, Nick Woltemade, 6 goals in the under-21 Euros for Germany, and 20 goal contributions in 33 games in all competitions for Stuttgart last season as well. He's a really, really talented player, tall lad, can play more as a number 10 almost. Like Isak, he's a bit of a unicorn in terms of what you would imagine he can do. He can play as a 9, but he can also play as a 10. Ideally, so stylistically, he's quite ideal. 85th percentile for non-penalty goals, 97th percentile for non-penalty goals, 97th percentile for shot-creating actions. I think that's really crucial, because he will create opportunities for himself, but also other people as well. Look at the passes attempted, 89th percentile, progressive passes, 87th percentile, touches, 99th percentile, progressive passes received, 94th percentile. So he's very heavily involved, as you can see by the stats and the roundedness of those stats. The numbers are fantastic. The value is interesting as well. He was going to join Bayern Munich, and I think that was why I was resistant on talking about him earlier in the window. But he'd probably be slightly cheaper as well. So 23 years old, not sure you'd be expected to pay 60-70 million pounds for him. Could be a decent option, but again, huge risk, one season. And to step into Isak's shoes, that's a really difficult situation. I'm not sure that any of these players are really ideal. I think there's huge pros to them. I think they're all really good players, but there's massive cons, especially someone like Vlahovic, who you're almost fighting a battle to get the best out of him. Someone like Watkins, who wouldn't have an issue coming in and performing, but wouldn't be there for long enough. Jackson, again, is too raw around the edges. Woltemade and Samu are not yet proven enough. Those are my thoughts. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. My thought is just keep Isak and go and get Vissa. Reintegrate Isak. And no, yesterday he didn't train with the first team, wasn't invited to the family day. I would imagine, and I said this on Twitter, that Eddie Howe is building on what he said in Korea about earning the right to train. That's his punishment. He'll be reintegrated this week. That's what I would hope at least happens. We'll see what does happen though. Let me know in the comment section what you think about these 5 options. Who you think Newcastle should go for? Should go for someone that I haven't mentioned. Quickly on Martial, those reports Newcastle had made a bid yesterday. I find this really strange, because he was going to join Como. Why did Newcastle move him then? Newcastle have liked him for a long time, and we know that they don't tend to let targets go, but his game time in Serie A, barely playing a full season in 2 years, is a bit of an interesting anomaly. It'd be interesting to understand why that is. But he's an excellent defender in terms of what he brings. He's tall, he's very good on the ball, he's very quick as well. Ideal sort of stylistically for what Newcastle want, good age too. So at the right price, this is a really good deal, but it has to be the right price, and I find it interesting that they're probably paying a little bit more than Como were going to pay a couple of weeks ago before he rejected that move. And apparently Max Allegri is not too happy about the idea of selling Thiaw. And John McGinn, that's an interesting one as well. Again, similar to what I was saying about Ollie Watkins, would Aston Villa want to do a deal there? But he's got lots of Premier League experience, Champions League experience as well. He's a good leader, a battling player, good presser in midfield. 30 years old though. What do you think on that? Not really the profile that Newcastle are looking for. Are Newcastle getting a little bit twitchy? Why are they panicking a little bit? Are they looking far down? How far the list are they looking down for players now? What do you think? For me, that makes a lot of sense stylistically, but in terms of his actual age and the situation with Villa, would Villa be willing to sell him for how much? He's obviously been captain there. It doesn't make obvious sense to me, but let me know in the comment section below. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode, and I'll catch you then. Cheers.